And we are live. This is Travis Witherspoon from Carter Cow Capital, helping you fight for your financial freedom throughout the forex market and just any market in general. I hope everybody's doing very well um, on this what Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday evening. As we go through and be able to take a look at some overall trading pairs. Uh, I almost doubt that there may end up being some opportunities to be able to get into the market based off of how the market actually end up falling, but we will take a look at the overall opportunities and see what could be potential setups that could actually end up happening over the course of today and for the rest of the week. And also, I want to be able to celebrate wins today as well. If you end up having a big win today based off of the market actually end up making a movement, place a screenshot on the chart. Let's go ahead and be able to talk about that. Once again, this built off of being able to have a community of traders that once again celebrate themselves when it comes down to being able to win, but also be able to find opportunities for people to be able to make money. So with that being said, I hope everybody's doing very well. This is what the fifth or sixth consecutive night session that we end up doing, which is very good, and the community is actually building up, so it's actually pretty cool to be able to see that happen. End up having a great conversation with um, a couple people that was actually in the community just a few minutes ago. Um, but here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm not a CTA, so I'm not going to tell you whether to buy or to sell. What I'm going to do is teach you education, and from that education, you can be able to make your own informed decision. Now, I understand that trading involves risk. It involves risk of being able to make money, also involves risk of being able to lose money. So please keep that in mind. And understand that past performance is not indicative of future results, which means that if you end up making money yesterday, it's not promised that you're going to end up making money today. So with that being said, as we go through and take a look at the charts, like always, we always go and take a look at what's happening with the economic calendar first. And then after that, we're going to review what ended up happening today and see how that's going to end up affecting us going into the rest of the week. So today, what we end up having was we end up having climate count and unemployment rate for the pounds. They actually end up being 3.6 and negatives and 6.3 respectively. We'll see how that end up affecting pairs like GU and a few other pairs like that. Germany end up having their consumer prices and they actually end up remaining to be the same at 8.8. And then after that, obviously the biggest move that ended up happening today was the consumer price index of food and energy. And the numbers actually end up being positive. But the monthly budget statement that ended up happening at 2 o'clock and what ended up happening at 8:30 actually ended up making the market end up push down to the downside. Now, if you've been using the trading strategy that we've been working off of, you would truly know that this was very predictable. Now, my biggest thing that I always say is at 8:30, when I end up seeing that there's high impact news and I know that there's a fundamentals day, I don't necessarily trade within the first 15 minutes of this overall move. So what happened was that we ended up talking earlier this morning, and I'm going to start off with US 30 because primarily I want to take a look at what ended up happening based off of this movement a little bit earlier. We ended up calling out a trade on Friday. Um, for the most part, um, everyone that ended up having the opportunity to be able to get into the trade. We talked about two take profit values. One was at 32,640, and then the other one's at 32,700 when it came down to this movement. Literally, what ended up happening was that it placed us in profit, and then after that, shot straight down to the downside, and being able to make that move clearly within that first 15 minutes, it ended up falling 300 points. So legitimately, it went inside of a high volume node, and then after that, fell outside of the high volume node, just like that. Or it went inside of the peak of the high volume node and fell right down to the peak of the high volume node of the trade that we end up pulling out and talking about from that beginning. I'm going to show what that actually looks like real quick, everybody. If you look at me one quick second. Um, so I'm actually I did not take the trade to the downside. I'm going to say that verbatim. I did not take the trade to the downside, but this was the volume profile that we ended up looking at. We ended up taking the trade when the market broke out of consolidation on Thursday and on Friday. I take profit positions because I felt like we were going to go big fish hunting because we had a lot of space, in which we did. Was at 32,640, and then after that 32,700 for that movement. As soon as the market ended up pushing up into that zone, we can see that the market rejected right off the top of this high volume node, and then after that fully rejected all the way back down into the bottom of this consolidation that we end up spotting out in that was September 7th. when it came down to that movement. So really and truthfully, it erased a lot of the movement towards the upside. Now, how was it predictable? The market ended up hitting the top of the overall top of the high volume node that was next. We end up having this big block of consolidation that ended up happening from July 31st or July 28th all the way until August 10th. That was a major area where the market actually ended up rejecting from there. So essentially, what happened was that there was the full breakout. There was another retest of this overall area that ended up happening. Then after that, the market actually ended up falling down. So my question to everyone that's out here, for the people that end up watching our community, that end up saying that, how many people actually end up catching the sale? How many people actually end up catching the sale of this trade, end up making some money off of that movement? If you end up doing that, type in me. If you have a chart of what you end up doing, once again, place that in. Let's celebrate you and being able to talk about how big of a move that actually was. Um, but I have a hard line rule. It's always been the same. The first 15 minutes of any type of high impact news, I typically don't trade it. And when I noticed that the market actually ended up erasing this whole move that we end up having, and plus I was inside of the classroom, I did not necessarily make a move when it came down to that. What's going on, Brian? What's going on, Big Dog? Hope everything's going well with you. Would you like to talk about how many points you made off of that? Let's write down how many points you end up making. Let's not talk about profit because some people don't like talking about how much profit they end up making off of the move. But how much points did you end up making off of it? And while we're going through that, let's go back to what we end up talking about. So obviously this strategy is built off of talking about exploiting low volume nodes, being able to find continuation trades and everything else. 280 points. Nice. Congratulations. Anybody else? Anybody else end up catching this move? There was 1,500 points of overall movement. I'm kind of upset that I didn't make none of this movement, but I'm not upset either because we end up talking about this large movement that we end up making our money off of. Can't be mad about that when it comes down to that movement. But if y'all indulge me for a second, if you notice, because we always like talking about being able to teach while we're actually going through trading. What type of pattern do y'all see right here? Anybody inside of the chat, what pattern do y'all see right here? Or better yet, what type of wedge is that? To make it a little bit easier for us to answer. Gonna wait a few seconds and see if somebody will be able to type in and know the answer. What type of wedge is that? Okay. Correction about 50 points. Yes, this is an example of a rising wedge. All right, so you end up taking a look at what ended up happening. Oh, 250 points. That's what you end up getting. Okay, nice. So market ended up hitting here, went down. Then after that, started to be a little bit tighter. I probably should move this over a little bit tighter to be able to show exactly where it hit. It was from here to there. And this was from here to here. But essentially, based off of this rising wedge and how we end up pushing, typically when you look at a rising wedge, I always say think about a roller coaster, right? When you end up getting on to a regular roller coaster, you end up let's think about it from right here. Everybody's getting strapped up, everybody's getting secure when it comes down to the top of the roller coaster. I mean, when it comes down to getting onto the roller coaster, and then after that, you start going up on the roller coaster. You start hearing that ticking noise, and then once you end up getting to the top of the peak of that consolidation or the top of the peak of that wedge, then after that, just like a regular roller coaster, you look down, and then after that, you see the market absolutely fall. Now, the problem with this move and the problem why I did not jump into this move was this. When the market ended up doing that last tick, typically you end up having a breakout. And then typically once you end up having a breakout, you end up seeing a retest. This one did not retest at all. It literally just said, hey, it's time to go. And because it ended up making that move, and legitimately because it ended up doing 300 points in 300 points in 3 minutes, and in 15 minutes it ended up doing 600 points. I wasn't interested in being able to make any move off of that. So that's me personally. For everybody else that did, once again, congratulations to you. It's a heck of a move. It's always good to be able to have a great come up, especially if you end up catching it to the upside and then after that riding it to the downside. Now, the thing is, because this happened, it kind of resets a lot of things on what ended up happening with this market. One, obviously, we can be able to say that this is basically, it's not necessarily, obviously, it's a big move to the downside, but it broke through three different vortex areas. It broke through three different low volume areas when it came down to this movement. So essentially, what ended up happening and what I'm looking at right here is that the market basically ended up matching up with this consolidation right there. So as we're looking for opportunities, I will say this going into tomorrow and then probably going into Thursday. Anytime that you have a big drop off of movement to the downside, I say expect a correction to the upside to be able to fulfill some of that downside movement. You may end up seeing it in the London session today, depending on how the market actually ends up trading. Now, the question simply put is, would you be interested in being able to take a buy trade to the upside based off of that consolidation? Obviously, if we're looking at it from here, we can be able to see that we have a little bit of movement that we can be able to take up to 31,300. But clearly, the direction of movement is to the downside. What's going on, Steve? Hope everything's going well with you. Steve, did you catch any of any of this big drop in any one of these pairs, whether it was US 30, NAS, DAX, or anything else like that? Did you catch any of that movement to the downside? I personally didn't. So I want to celebrate everybody that did. So if you did, tell me how many points you end up making off of it. But I personally didn't. After it moved that amount of movement to the downside, I wasn't interested in being able to make anything off of that. The market could go up to 31,300. Me personally, I'm not taking that trade. Right? I'm probably not going to end up looking at buying on this overall movement. It is very clear that the determination of what the direction is going to end up being is bearish. Because of that determination of the market being bearish, and that means that I'm going to look for a high price. I will allow the market to be able to get a high price, start to consolidate again. More than likely, it will probably end up being right around this overall high volume node area again once it starts to consolidate. Then after that, I'll look at being able to trade. Short to me, I did not buy much. Okay. Or I do not short anything. Okay, cool. So, me personally, US 30 is out. US 30 to me is out of the question until it kind of gives a movement to the upside and kind of retracing, and then after that, starting to build another consolidation. Type in a wire, yes, if that makes sense. I personally wouldn't want anybody to be able to jump into a move tomorrow. And yeah, you may end up making some. All right, let me rephrase that. If you jump into a move tomorrow, the move that I would probably say look at being able to do would be a scalp to the upside and a scalp to the downside. I wouldn't look at being able to get into a trade for a long-term move because the market's already done moved 1,400 points, and 1,500 points to the downside, and because of that, really and truthfully, anything can happen at this particular point. The market can be slow tomorrow and give you false breaks. The market can be bullish and give you a big movement to the upside just to only fall down to the downside. Or in this case, I would like to be able to see this market start to build out another consolidation block, and then after that, we can kind of be able to make a movement off of that. So currently, right now, I'm personally not going to do anything until really probably Thursday, and kind of seeing what's going to happen off of Thursday. Is there anything on the economic calendar for Thursday? We have retail sales for Thursday. So I'm almost for certain tomorrow's going to consolidate. I would bank that tomorrow will end up having one big break, and then after that, it will consolidate tomorrow. So US 30, I'm not going to end up looking at for its overall movement and for its overall trade. I don't think it'll make it a lot of sense of being able to take that trade. Even if it does give you some points off of that, me personally, I'll probably just stay away from it. Let's talk about NAS and see what happened based off of NAS 100. Nas 100 end up having, once again, the same movement to the downside. All of these are going to end up being the same reoccurring thing. The biggest difference is where did they fall at? All right, so we end up catching all this move to the upside, end up hitting our full take profit, the extension at 12,860. Yes. And then after that, fell straight to the floor. Okay. So we have this movement to the downside. We know that the market, when it fell all the way down, right back into the bottom of that support of this large consolidation box that we end up talking about from August 31st to the beginning of September, or the middle portion of September. Um, so now, essentially, we're back inside of consolidation. That's the easiest way to be able to explain that. And because of that, even though even though the market has started to consolidate a little bit, it has to build out some consolidation for me to be able to think about being able to make a move. I would rather it build out consolidation over the course of the next 2 or 3 days before being able to jump into getting into another trade at this particular point. Okay. So once again, I'm just being honest when it comes down to most of these pairs. I probably wouldn't look at being able to trade tomorrow's movement just because of not fear, but just more of, hey, the market's already done moved a certain amount of points. Do I really think that the market is going to end up moving up or moving down at a significant level when it comes down to overall movement? I just don't think that it will, um, especially with retail sales coming out on Thursday. DAX, we end up closing out on that trade, or German 40, we end up closing out on that trade yesterday as well. Earlier, we end up having two trades to the upside on this one. I'm going to end up talking about those real quick once I end up pulling this up on the chart. Where's my chart for German 30, German 40? Oh, there it is. How about pound yen? Let's take a look at pound yen. How are you doing today? How well did you end up doing for your trading? Hopefully, you end up having a win. Um, hopefully, if you end up catching some of that short, if you end up making some profit off of it, um, you don't have to talk about, well, you don't have to talk about the profit that you made, but talk about the points that you end up making off of it. How well did you end up doing in trading today? So that DAX trade earlier this morning, we end up calling out being able to get in at 13,476. I take profit was at 13,560. I end up getting out of this movement right before the 830 bill end up hitting. So I end up catching it right when the market gave that big little spike to the upside. I end up getting out at 13,550. When the market ended up hitting 13,550, took me out, and then after that, legitimately ended up rapidly falling down. So same deal. This one actually fell down to the bottom of this support line right here. Or basically back to the bottom of this support area right here. So once again, just kind of waiting to be able to see what's happening for its overall movement. Asian markets seem to be following the U.S. market. I believe so. I believe so as well, at least at this particular point. Um, so essentially, what we ended up having was our big push up. It ended up completing that movement that we ended up talking about to the upside, broke down into consolidation. Then after that, started going back into this area right here, and then after that started to consolidate one more time. So really and truthfully, if there's any pair that I would kind of look at being able to make a move off of, it will probably end up being DAX because it's not necessarily US based, but overall probably not going to end up being much of a move at this particular point. From an hour perspective, there's still, if it ends up breaking to the downside, it'll basically fall back inside of that large consolidation block. Anytime that you end up going block inside of a block, there's really only one move. It's a very quick scalp. There's an opportunity to be able to sell it all the way down to 12,930 or 12,940. But if that happens, the market will have to break below 13,030 to be able to make that move. That's very close, but at the same time, once again, I would like for this market from an hourly perspective and from a 15-minute perspective to be able to build out a consolidation first. So I would like it to be able to hit this support, hit this resistance, hit this support, kind of build out that first. And then if it builds it out for a day, or if it builds it out for Um, yeah, if it builds it out for a day, then I kind of feel a little bit more comfortable in being able to make a movement on this one. But until then, I would like to be able to see that this market rejects off of 13,100 before being able to make a move off of that. So for DAX, nothing right now. We end up making the money at in that 630 trade that we end up talking about. Obviously, we didn't get all of it to the downside on any one of these moves, but that's fine because we end up making the movement, making the money based off of the movement to the upside. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the let's go ahead and get into pound yen. Let's see what's happening based off of that. You think both China and Japan are both dumping? Okay, well that means that's actually a good thing. That may end up giving us an opportunity to be able to trade today. Let's see what's happening. All right, so weekly perspective. Market is in consolidation at this particular point. It's done moved. Um, the resistance of this overall movement is at 168.70. The support is at 159.40. Currently, the market right now is in the middle of that consolidation from a weekly standpoint. That makes it kind of hard to be. Let's see, one is down 300, the other down 400. Let's see. Are you looking at the index? Are you looking at the index, or are you just looking at individual pairs, Steve? Are you looking at the index, or are you looking at individual pairs? Is there any way to show you my chart, individual pairs? Yes. If you take a screenshot and you place it inside of the chat box, then what I can be able to do is take a look at your screenshot. Okay. Gotcha. I'll take a look at it. So here's the deal. This is what I'm seeing. Market to me is still in consolidation. Obviously, we can see that from a weekly perspective. What's probably happening is that the market ended up rejecting off the top of resistance, and currently right now is starting to basically move back, down to the downside. Because we are seeing that, me personally, I think I've said this multiple times. I don't like trading inside of consolidation because the market is basically in the middle of consolidation. The simple rule for me is this: if you're going to trade consolidation, you want to buy support, you want to sell resistance. After that, you end up everything else in the middle does not matter. Currently, right now, we're in the middle of this overall area, so this to me does not matter to me personally. If I'm looking at, let's say, if I was interested in being able to make a sale, in which, to be honest, I'm probably not based off of what I'm looking at. The only trade that I would look at being able to see is because this market has hit resistance three separate times. The only trade that I would look at being able to do, because the market is moving to the downside, would be basically at the midway point of this. So if you are going to end up doing it, it will be a scalp to the midway point. If you can be able to get that, that will probably be the best way of being able to make a trade off of that. Nikkei 225 index. Okay, I'll take a look at that one as well. Okay, I'll take a look at both. I'll take a look at both of those as well. So um, for me personally, in three, I probably would not do anything with it. Now, yeah, I probably wouldn't do anything with it. I'd probably just stay away and kind of see how the market kind of reacts off of it. Let's see. This will be the first time I've done this one in a while. Let's see. Oh wow. Okay. Uh, Got to be a better chart that I end up looking off of. Do you do a futures account with that? Do you go with TVC? Which one do you do? What's your typical broker, or who do you typically look at your chart with off of this? It kind of make it a little bit easier for me to be able to get a better idea. N1 225 based off of what source? Do you use CME or do you go with just the TVC? This will be my first time going on this chart, so want to kind of get a better idea. Hey man, you got to have top-down analysis. You got to have top-down analysis. Mine is a little bit differently. I don't go to the monthly anymore. I think that the weekly gives a better chance of being able to know what the current direction actually is. Um, thanks is exactly what I was thinking myself regarding not the trade. Okay, perfect. Okay, so you do TVC. Okay, perfect. So we'll see what's happening when it comes down to this movement. I go weekly. I go weekly to be able to give current direction. I go daily to be able to tell me what's happening with the actual trading zone. If both of those match up, then after that I go 2 hour and then 15 minute. I don't go below the 15 minute. I go more from a swing trading perspective. All right, so a lot of stuff happening right here, but overall, obviously the trend is bullish. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not able to send my analysis via the chat room. Okay, so do this then. What indicators am I using? I use down chain trend meter. I use stochastic RSI, volume profile, and moving average for this strategy. Trader FFF, I was in pound United States 16 hours ago. I was down 736, woke up with plus 85, didn't believe it. I'm almost bankrupt. Now I'm afraid to enter. Okay, we'll take a look at the pound United States and see what's happening with that. Obviously, the biggest thing, more than anything else, is always equity management and being able to make sure that you can be able to have solid equity management when it comes down to your trades. So what I'm going to end up doing, Trader FFF, for that is this. Um, I don't know what pairs that you actually end up using, but I have this thing called trade tickets, which allows you to be able to take a look at all of the Forex pairs and kind of take a look at what's happening with that. It also ends up having gold and a few other pairs like that. But what you can be able to do is take a look at placing your account size. Let's say if your account size is $5,000, right? And if we want to take a look at the pound United States dollar, we can take a look at how much risk that we're going to end up applying to that. Let's say if you want to only risk 2% of your account based off of that movement. You place in 2%, and now you know that every time that you end up taking a trade, whether if you're risking 100 pips or 500 pips, you're risking $100 based off of that movement. And then from there, what this system does is it'll tell you if you can be able to take the trade or not based off of your risk reward factor. So let's say if your risk was 100 points and your reward was 200, it will tell you no until you end up going over 230, because that gives you a risk reward factor of 2.31. 1 to 2.3. The reason why I say 2.3, it's funny because I just said this earlier, is because you want to be able to, one, have the money for the risk that you end up applying. You want to be able to make a profit, and then after that, you want to be able to pay for taxes. So for me, being always having a risk reward factor 1 to 2.3 now allows me to be able to say, if I do take money out, then I already set aside money for the taxes that I'm going to have to be able to pay back at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year in the first place. But do me a favor, send me a private message with your email address if you don't want to place it inside of the chat box, and I'll send this over to you as a way of being able to use or being able to have solid equity management. Anybody else that may be interested that's inside of this live stream, type in me as well, and then send me a private message, and we'll go from there. Can you repeat the first indicator again? Absolutely. So first one, down chain trend meter. Second one is stochastic RSI. I use volume profile, and then after that, I use moving average. Yeah, down chain trend meter. I don't know why it's not showing up right here. Interesting. How do they calculate taxes for Forex? They calculate it based off of how much money that you actually end up taking out of your account, right? So let's say, and it depends on whatever your tax bracket is and everything else, and if you have a business. But um, ultimately, what I end up saying is this: let's say if I know that I'm going to end up taking out, let's say if I end up taking out $1,000 a month, and on paper, it's going to end up showing that I end up having $12,000 of capital gains. Then a percentage of the money that I end up taking out, I already calculated in my head is for taxes. So that percentage that I have to be able to pay back, or that I know I'm going to end up paying back, I will set that to the side and place that into another account, knowing that when it's time to be able to pay the taxes, I have the money ready to go, and I made that based off of profit, and being able to go from there. That's just my simple way of being able to think about it that way, and being able to go from there. Because in the States, Uncle Sam is not really an uncle to me, but he keeps on going inside of my pockets. So I at least got to have some money waiting for him when it's time to be able to do it. Oh, we were talking about, okay, good. We're talking about this pair. All right. So, yes, the biggest pimp in the world. I mean, yeah. Let's see. Obviously, we had this large consolidation from 3,700 with a support of 27.5. It failed and broke out, and then after that started to push back inside of the consolidation. So essentially, what you can be able to say is that there was a breakout and then a retest of an overall movement. Currently, right now, if I'm looking at it from a field perspective, let's just talk about what the direction actually is from a field perspective first. Um, okay, that makes sense. The extension ended up getting hit when the market, so the market ended up making this type of movement. There goes your A, there goes your B. Market went up to the 618, didn't go up to the 786, which means that the D extension is at the 1.618. Um, Once that ends up happening and being able to go to the downside, then obviously you have a new field that you're going to end up working off of. So essentially, here goes your new A, there goes your new B, right here. Currently, right now, as the market is moving inside of this consolidation area, our new field that we're working off of, or a new ABCD swing that we're working off of. Oh, geez, come on now. Is this A, B? The market went up to the 8.6 now. So if the market does fall eventually, from a Fibonacci perspective, it could go all the way down to 23,400. Um, Now, what does that mean for us being able to say if there's any type of activity or opportunity to being able to get into this market? I don't like how this thing is actually jumping around. Tran, what's going on? Hope everybody's doing. Hope you're doing very well. How did you do in the markets today? How did you do in the markets today? You have a big win today. Eesh. All this gapping is wow. Okay. Um, Tell me if y'all see this from a daily perspective. Uh, are y'all seeing a channel? Do y'all see a channel? Or better yet, this is more like a. Are y'all seeing more of a channel? How do you send you a private message? Are you a friend of mine? If you're a friend of mine, all you have to do is just send me a message based off of clicking on the actual tag of Carter Cow Capital. Once you do that, then you can send a message and it just show up from there. Put it smaller. I'm seeing a larger channel from a daily perspective. Obviously, we got this, 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 this. The market is kind of moving in this phase. Went here, um, went down to here, went back up here. Currently, the market is right here, which means that it's on the road of being able to go down to there. Uh, I don't know. To be honest, I probably wouldn't do anything with this chart. At least if I'm looking at it from a weekly to daily perspective. From a And plus, I'm not getting any. I'm not able to see volume off of this as well. Probably. Let me do this. Let me go to a different chart real quick. Maybe that might be something that I'm not seeing. Okay, there we go. So that last field swing that I ended up talking about was from here to here. Market went up to the 8.6. There's an expectation that it could go all the way down to 23, 23,370, which means that if the market ends up falling below 26,280, then that could be a very large drop off overall movement. Um, I'm still seeing that channel. Because it's in the middle of that channel, I probably wouldn't do anything. Because it's basically in the middle of that area. Even though I know that's based off of weekly, but even with that being said, we're in the middle of this overall area. Now, let's talk about for the scalpers out there. For the scalpers that like to be able to take trades inside of this overall area, let's talk about where you could be able to kind of make a move off of it. Me personally, I'm not going to touch it. That's me just talking in general. I would not personally touch it. Um, but we know that if we know that if that's the natural resistance, and we know that if this is the natural support, that more than likely, based off of this angle, this market is probably going to end up falling down to at least 27,290 for the movement to the downside. There is a counter trend line break that has happened. The market is retesting that counter trend line break because of this engulfing candlestick that ended up happening yesterday. Um, so I do expect when you look at this from a 2 hour perspective that the market will try to make a little bit of a U-turn first. Once that U-turn does happen and you end up getting, um, if it gives somewhat of whether if it's a flag or whether if it keeps on going at an angle, then after that you can truly see that the market will end up making a movement from there. There's no sound at the moment. Sound check, sound check. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me? I'll probably turn on my volume. Sound check, sound check, sound check, sound check. All right, there we go. Yeah. Okay. I will wait for this market to be able to give a retest, and then after that, I look at being able to move from there. But currently, right now, there's really nothing that I would be interested in being able to take tonight. Um, let's see. Um, any other pair? Any other pair while we're still here? Any other thing that anybody might be interested in being able to take before we go ahead and call it a night? Like I ended up saying a little bit earlier, US 30, Nas 100, XBX 500, DAX. Well, DAX, take that away. DAX will probably end up moving on its own. Um, I think that they probably going to end up going. I probably that they're going to end up being in a situation to where tomorrow there will be somewhat of a break to the upside, but it's going to start building out a consolidation. So I wouldn't be interested in being able to make any trade on Wednesday. Retail sales come out on Thursday. I will wait 15 minutes after that news ends up coming out. There will probably be a move on Thursday, probably about midday, that we could be able to kind of pay attention to. Um, Other than that, probably uh, really and truthfully, that move that ended up happening earlier today, for some people, was probably the move of the year. Um, and kind of went from there. There it is. We talked about that earlier. There goes that rising wedge on gold. Let's go ahead and talk about gold real quick. Gold for me, once again, I have not been trading gold. I've been very, I've been very, what's the best way to be able to say it? I've been saying the same thing. I would not trade gold until the market breaks below 1685. That's been my personal opinion. Obviously, there's a large consolidation from 2070, which is the resistance, to 1685, which is the support. You take a look at this from a daily perspective. The market ended up going inside of a smaller consolidation area where we end up talking about the support was at 1685, but it was giving a little bit of a rising wedge based off of that movement. And just like the rising wedge that we end up seeing in US 30, it's the same thing that ended up happening based off of this pair because all of them have a US crossover. So based off of that movement, if you go to the 1 hour, what you end up seeing was the market basically end up making a couple movements off of this. I end up saying that the market ended up giving us I remember this verbatim. If you were interested in being able to take this trade, I said that if the market ended up giving you a counter trend line break and it ended up bouncing off of the support, I would look at being able to enter off of that next candlestick and at least be able to ride it up to the halfway point. I said because the market actually ended up hitting multiple times for the actual support area, that this last time that more than likely the better trade will be at the halfway point. Well, what ended up happening when the news ended up coming out, actually ended up breaking below this. There was never a retest, so you had to be able to see it and actually catch it when the market actually ended up moving to the downside. So my question is this: did anybody make any money off of gold to the downside? Anybody make any money off of gold to the downside? I personally did not trade it, and personally, I haven't been trading gold since the beginning of the summer. Um, but my question, yo, anybody end up making money off of gold? Oh, no worries, no worries. Okay, okay. So game plan is still the same. When it comes down to go, I'm waiting for the market to be able to break below 1685. Once it breaks below 1685, there's a take profit position um, that will end up being at what is it? It ended up being at 1655. So if it breaks below 1685, I think it's going to run and try to blow through 1655 for the take profit value first. To me, that's the scout that I'll be able to go off of when it comes down to gold. Essentially, until then, there's really nothing for me to do off of that pair. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up in here. Remember, I'm going in the mornings at um, I'm going in the mornings at 6:30 a.m. If you're interested in being able to catch our morning sessions for right now, I'm going to do that for the rest of this week, and then after that, kind of reevaluate because I'm going to be in my classroom if we're going to end up doing anything at 8 like we typically do. There could be a window of being able to do that, but I think 6:30 will actually be a little bit better for me, and it'll go from 6:30 to about 7 to 7:15 for us being able to move and being able to go from there. Not really what is the best prop firm to consider. Me personally, if I had to decide one, the only one that I've taken seriously was FTMO. But personally, I trade with my own money. So I probably wouldn't be the best person to be able to give an answer for when it comes down to that. But I will talk to the people that I know do it, and I'll see if I can be able to have an answer for you a little bit later on. Um, if it's not tomorrow, I can be able to have it to you by Thursday. So I send it to you as a message to be able to see which ones will probably end up being the best. But right off the top of my head, it'll probably end up being FTMO. But either way, um, you'll still have to um, you still have to go what 3 phases of being able to pass and kind of go from there and being able to do all that. Right? If you like what I end up doing, please make sure that you end up hitting that boost button for me. I do appreciate everyone that ends up doing that. Obviously, if you would like to be able to hop inside of one of my free webinars that I'm going to end up having, I'm going to end up having one tomorrow at 7 p.m. I don't know what that is, 24-hour clock time. But think about it, that'll be what, 2 hours ago. Um, So it's 2100. Well, it'd be 1900 military time. If you're interested in being able to get more information about that, send me a private message. Get you set up when it comes down to that. I do appreciate each and every person that's been inside of these live chats. We're building out a community. I really do appreciate that. Hopefully everybody will end up helping everybody else try to win when it comes down to certain pairs. Y'all placing in trading opportunities. We've made money off of people's trading opportunities. Made money off the trading opportunities that I end up talking about. That's what it's all about in my mind. Um, I'm going to end up doing that with our Discord that we're going to end up building up as well. So if you're interested in learning about a little bit more about that, obviously send me a message when it comes down to that. Like always, plan your trade your plan. Everyone, I'll see y'all in the morning. Hopefully you end up having a good trading day. Remember, um, don't have to step on the gas pedal tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be a big move tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. Everybody, take it easy.